Gary Neville is somebody who's spoken out about the Glazers the last couple of years. Should have done it when he was a player. He regrets it. He says it in this interview. I want to run through this interview with Melissa Reddy out in Qatar at Sky Sports when Gary Neville speaks about the Glazers selling Manchester United, who the best new owners are for Man United coming in next. What should Man United fans be demanding? What can we expect to happen next? It's a wide-ranging interview, and I want to give my thoughts on quite a lot of what Gary had to say because I think it's very important for everybody who's fought to get the Glazers out. Gary Neville might not have spoken early enough, but the fact that he's been speaking the last couple of years has helped with this push. So let me run through everything that Gary had to say. Please, if you would consider drop a like on this video. It does make a big, big difference. But let's waste no time and get straight into this. And Gary's initial and immediate thoughts on the Glazers selling Manchester United. This is what he had to say.
Doesn't surprise me. I've been saying it for 6 months that the Glazers would have to sell or part sell. Anybody that's close enough to the club knows that. There is a need for equity and cash in the club just for the infrastructure investments and spend that they're going to have to put in for the stadium, the training ground, the sporting project. They haven't got enough money.
Yeah.
They've got the debt in the club at this moment in time, which they can't increase. The debt market's collapsed. And there's also a very narrow window around the Chelsea valuation that I think was overhyped.
Yeah.
Also Liverpool selling.
Yes.
Super League falling away. The Glazers obviously getting a lot of criticism and persistent protests. There's no doubt the time is now, and it's been coming for 6-7 months, where if you were close enough to the situation in Manchester, you knew that they had to do this, and there was a narrow window to do it. And I thought from the start of the season it had to be within 12 months, and here it is. It's a big moment now for the.
It is I mean, you can't understate the size of how important this moment is. The fact that we are finally trying to get these rats out of the club. I'll go as far as saying rats. Of course I would. It's unfortunate that Gary didn't speak about the Glazers earlier, right? I think we can all agree on that. And Gary actually covers that in his interview later. Now, the part that you mentioned there, which I'm a little bit interested to do a bit more research into, is the idea that I'm sure if there's anybody in the comments below who've got a bit more financial expertise and knowledge than I do, the fact that they're saying that the debt market has collapsed. Obviously, you've seen it with the banks putting mortgages back in X, Y, Z in Britain. I don't know whether that's going to affect everything global financial situation in the market is a big downturn. The Super League, everything. It's not just a Ronaldo interview, which some people try to suggest. But Gary, as I said, Gary speaking out like he has in the last couple of years has really helped, I think. I'm not saying it's contributed hugely, but all the pieces add together in the same way that fans protesting at the games with the 1958, in the same way that there's fans online trying to do boycotts and trying to damage team viewers' rating on like Trustpilot, stuff like that. Every single thing has contributed to this point and helped to get to this point, as well as the Super League not working, as well as everything else. It's all contributed together. And it's fantastic that we're having these conversations. I love doing these videos because I've been wanting to do this video for so long. But what I want to move on to next is an interesting point here, because it's Gary Neville speaking about what he feels needs to be done in terms of who are the right owners. What should United fans be demanding? And before I quickly do dive into this, I want to thank Manscaped for supporting United People's TV. It's Cyber Monday. You can get a cracking deal. So please, if you would, just watch this for 30-40 seconds. Some integrations, they're nice and smooth. A bit like my... All jokes aside, big up to Manscaped for continuing to support United People's TV. And jingle bells, jingle balls. You can say what you want, but trust me, your balls will thank you. It's exactly what's written on the inside of the Manscaped box. And with the Performance Package 4.0, if you don't know what you get right now, you surely know here on United People's TV. Genuinely, I like this integration. I like speaking about this with you. They're products that I use. They're products that are genuinely very good at what they are supposed to do. You get the lawnmower for downstairs. You get the weed whacker for upstairs. You get a couple of free gifts, some boxes. You get some crop reviver, some crop preserver. What more could you want, honestly? Follow the link in the description. Click that. You get 20% off. We got a Black Friday coming up. We've got Christmas coming up. It's genuinely a fantastic gift for men. I can't recommend it enough. And that's why I'm happy to speak to you about it. So follow the link in the description and get yours. So Black Friday's already been and gone, but you can actually get 25% off using the link in the description. So please, if you are considering, they're good presents for men. Trust me. I can confirm. But let's dive into this next part where Gary, as I said, speaks about, I think this is probably the most interesting part. There's quite a few interesting parts to this interview. This one in particular, I think we need to have a discussion about.
And I think what the Manchester United fans need to see is a manifesto from the new owners. They need acceptance. We can't, I don't think, as a club anymore, and any club, I think, in this position, be handed an owner that basically screams against what the club stands for or what the club wants. So there are manifesto pledges that I think are really important, like a fan voice, like the fan experience, like maybe even positions for fans on the board, but then more practical things. The sporting project needs to improve. What's the sporting project going to be? Are they going to not take dividends? Are they going to make sure it's a debt-free football club and that they're reinvesting? Dividends maybe one day, but for the first 5 years, maybe there's a sort of if you like, a holiday on dividends, that they put everything back into the club. Maybe there's obviously a new stadium that needs to be built, a new training ground. These are pledges that I can think of off the top of my head that are really important, I think, for anybody bidding for Manchester United. It's a manifesto that needs putting forward so that the fans can, I think, understand. Because look, there's going to be many bids in the many billions, I would have suggested. And I think if the Glazers want to exit, I think in the right way, that would be to sell it to a party that isn't only the highest bidder, which I'm not naive to think they're not going to sell it to the highest bidder. But if they can get parties near the end to get to a figure that they like, and there might be 2 or 3 parties, it would be very nice, I think, for them to then put something forward to the season ticket holders, because the reality of it is, if the Glazers want to do this right, they have to make sure it's going to a party whereby the fans don't believe they're being lumped with another owner that they don't like. I've got my nervousness around,
There's quite a few points there that we need to have a discussion about. First and foremost, the Glazers will not be looking for a nice exit for them from the club. The Glazers will be looking for the exit that gets them the most money. So I think entertaining the idea that maybe the Glazers at this point will do something nice back to the fan. Oh yeah, we'll give you the great. I think it's a bit naive of Gary to sort of even suggest that concept. We know who they are. We know exactly how they operate. It's taken all this time for us to get them out of the club. I don't think at this point they're going to be, oh yeah, you know what, we'll do something good for the fans. But his idea there about the concept of a manifesto. Look, this is exactly why the 1958, what they're doing is so important, because we need to think about what's next. We have to make sure that whoever comes in next is the right owner. We have to. I think what Gary, obviously, you can hear and see that Gary is sort of leaning in towards doing a bit more political stuff, even the concept of a manifesto when it comes to a football club. But he's right. We have to make sure that whoever comes in next, we can hold them accountable to what they said they were going to do when they take over Manchester United. And I think that's pretty much what he's going for there. The concept of accountability is what a manifesto is for, because you know full well that if they're lying, and then you can just point out to the manifesto that got them in power in the first place. You can do it so often with so many politicians. I don't know whether it's a straight, kind of feels like a bit of a strange thing for a club owner to do. But United fans, I think we kind of need it after what we've had with the Glazers. We've been stung. We've been stung so badly that I get what Gary Neville's coming from. I don't think the Glazers will be looking for any sort of nice exit in any way, shape or form. And they won't get a great exit from the club. It doesn't matter what they do. But I still don't know. Again, there's so much more to unpack from this interview. I don't know where it's going to be, whether it's going to be Dubai coming into Manchester United or US investment. It feels like one of those 2 options are the most likely at this point in time. But something that I found quite interesting was Melissa actually asked him directly about, do you regret not speaking out against the Glazers earlier? And this is what Gary had to say on that, because I know it's a conversation that so many people have had for a long, long time.
I don't want to come up with excuses, probably, to be fair, because we were successful. We were managed by Sir Alex Ferguson, who, you know, you stuck to football. You know, they stick to football on Twitter. With Sir Alex Ferguson, you stuck to football. There was no player, no member of staff ever spoke out against the leverage takeover. When it happened, we got on with winning trophies and winning Champions Leagues and winning leagues. And the club, to be fair, carried on being successful. And I worked on the theory at the time that we could have worse owners. They were quite passive. They didn't interfere. I never saw any interference whilst I was at the club for that 7 or 8 years that I was still there. When Sir Alex Ferguson left, it's then that I started to realise that they only were successful because of Sir Alex Ferguson. And actually, they've not been able to develop a successful sporting project without him. So the fact of the matter is, they're taking dividends out. They've not developed the stadium. They let the training ground go to ruin. We really are second class when it comes to the sort of status of our sort of infrastructure at the club and our facilities. That can't happen, and we're not successful on the pitch. So you put all that together, and that's where you get to a point whereby, no, enough's enough. And I started to speak out, obviously, 2 or 3 years ago. Many fans will say, you should have done it earlier, and I cannot disagree with them. And I can have regrets about it all my life, but the reality of it is I have spoken out in the last 2 or 3 years quite a lot. I haven't enjoyed what I've seen. Maybe the signs were obviously there 15, 20 years ago, and those fans were right. But let's not make sure that we jump out of the frying pan into the fire.
Look, right. I think Gary absolutely regrets not saying anything against these leeches. Of course he does. He said it right there. But and it's something I think I've spoken about on the morning streams. People like to take people down a step, even if what Gary Neville is doing now in speaking out and has been speaking out against the Glazers is a positive thing. But instead of focusing on that, it's more a case of, well, why don't you do this? And while there is some credence to that in questioning it, let's just focus. I don't know. It's because I'm generally quite a positive person, and right now, we shouldn't be focusing on what Gary Neville hasn't done previously. We should be focusing on what Gary Neville is doing at this moment in time. We should be focusing on the fact that Gary Neville is speaking out against the Glazers, has spoken out against the Glazers, and wants what is best for Manchester United. And isn't it? It's so weird. Maybe weird's the wrong word, but it's mad that United and Liverpool are up for the sale at the same time. We've been waiting for this conversation for 20 years. Finally, when we have this conversation, Liverpool are for sale at the same time. It's crazy, but also reflective of what the market worldwide is doing. These are billionaires, man. They're not making this decision after waking up and having a coffee and going, you know what, I'm going to sell United. I'm going to sell Liverpool. They would have had countless presentations, months worth of investment work, X, Y, Z, to get to this point. And Gary Neville was asked who he felt would be the best and better investment opportunity. And I don't think he said one word wrong here.
And, you know, I don't want to be disrespectful to Liverpool at all, because they're a massive football club. When you look at sort of the height of English football, when it comes to viewing figures, fans, commercial revenues, it's Manchester United and Liverpool at the very top. Forget the fact that Manchester City at this moment in time, I think, create a higher revenue naturally through sort of what would be traditional means. Manchester United and Liverpool are the biggest clubs in the country by a mile. But Manchester United will be, I think, more sought after and will fetch a higher price than Liverpool just because of its might. And I think Liverpool probably, unless they've got something sorted, they're probably going to have to wait a little bit, because I think the buyers are probably going to go to Manchester United first, unless there's a Liverpool fan that's very wealthy somewhere who has allegiance to Liverpool. But I think if you were looking at both as an asset side by side, you choose Manchester United, and that's not just me being biased as a Manchester United fan. So that will likely be the sort of what would be the first bidder on the highest bidder, and then I suspect the rest then will go to Liverpool.
Do you think there's any?
I just don't see how there's any lie there whatsoever. It all depends on, I suppose, I think it depends on the longevity of the investment. Because if you look at Liverpool now, they've had Anfield redeveloped. They've got a new stadium. They've had success in the last few years. They're effectively a team you can go in. You haven't really got to do much. You just got to go in there and buy new players. And then the rest kind of all sits. And that's where you'll be looking to be successful and get your, if you, as I said, I'm trying to speak from a purely business perspective. Whereas you look at Manchester United, we need a new stadium. We need a new training ground. I've spoken about this quite a few times before. Liverpool, right now, they are towards a bit of a peak of their value. They're probably going to dip in the next couple of years. And United, look, somehow we're still worth the value we are, but that's based on the success that we've had for decades previously, rather than what's going on at the moment. Man United is the bigger opportunity. Man United represents the greatest return on investment, but it also represents the greater investment. You need to spend more to make. That's what happens in life. You spend money to make money. But I want you to let me know what you think about this whole Gary Neville interview in the comments below. As I said, I found it to be interesting. I understand the points he's making about this concept of a manifesto. I might do a video separately tomorrow on this and run through that with you in detail. Maybe we can try and line up maybe 5 to 10 points that we think that they should be asked, which is, I imagine, what Man United Supporters Trust will be doing, which is, I imagine, the 1958 will be doing. Any fan group that is going to be thinking about what's next with the new owners, they'll be thinking about that. So I think it's an interesting point he's raised. But what about his comments on the Glazers, on regretting not speaking out about them earlier, on Liverpool, Manchester United? You let me know what you think in the comments below, as you always do. And make sure you drop a like on the video. But isn't it nice? Well, not nice, doesn't even cover it. Isn't it amazing how we're having these conversations now, genuinely because the Glazers are selling our club? Still a bit stunned by that. I genuinely am.